My dear friends, often we are curious about our fate, about the lines in our palms. One such line, people say, is the death line. They believe this line reveals when life ends. But let us ask a deeper question. Why wait for a line to tell us when to live? There is a moment in every person's life when silence becomes louder than noise. It may happen in the middle of a crowded room or in the quiet of the night. It may happen while staring into a fire or walking through the trees. This moment is not about the world outside. It is about the world inside. The moment when something deep within you whispers, "What are you doing with your time?" The thought may not come in words. They come as a sense of unease, as restlessness, as emptiness, or sometimes as fear. The kind of fear that is not loud and chaotic, but still and persistent. It is not fear of a monster. It is the fear of waste. The fear of living a life that is long in years, but shallow in meaning. This fear arises when one begins to reflect on death not necessarily as an end, but as a reminder. When you look at the lines in your palm and wonder about the so-called death line, you are not trying to predict the exact moment your breath will stop. You are perhaps unconsciously confronting the possibility that it might stop soon or suddenly, and wondering what will be left behind. That question is not about fear of dying. It is a call to pay attention. It is a reminder that your life is not guaranteed and your time is not infinite. The awareness of death, therefore, is not something to avoid. It is something to embrace. Because when you become conscious of death, you become conscious of life. The people who walk through life thinking they are immortal, thinking they have endless years, are often the ones who waste the most time. They postpone their dreams. They delay their healing. They ignore their passions. They suppress their voice. They think they will begin tomorrow or next year or when the timing is right. But there is no promise of a tomorrow. Life does not owe you any specific length of time. You were given this moment. And this moment is all you have. The deadline in your palm is not a sentence. It is an invitation. An invitation to wake up, to stop drifting, to take full responsibility for how you spend the time you are gifted. There is a teaching in many spiritual traditions, especially in the wisdom of the Shaolin Temple, that encourages one to meditate on death, not to become afraid, but to become present, to become focused, to become clear. You see, focus is not about achieving something far away. Focus is about presence. It is about sharpening your awareness so that you see clearly what is in front of you, what is within you, and what is truly important. When you are aware of death, you no longer waste time on things that are unimportant. You stop chasing status. You stop clinging to possessions. You stop arguing to be right. And you start seeking to understand. You realize that peace is more valuable than victory, that stillness is more powerful than noise, that truth is more nourishing than approval. Most people are distracted, not because they are weak, but because they have not yet confronted their mortality. They believe time is abundant, so they do not protect their attention. They scroll and scroll and scroll. They gossip, they complain, they blame, they stay busy but not effective. They fill their schedules but not their souls. They confuse movement with progress and consumption with purpose. But when the awareness of death enters the mind, not as a panic but as a presence, clarity begins to grow. You begin to see the difference between what is urgent and what is essential. You stop asking, what do I have to do today? And you start asking, what really matters today? This shift does not come easily. It requires discipline. It requires silence. It requires honesty. Because looking into the mirror of death is not comfortable. It reveals where you have been asleep in your own life. It shows you the places where you have betrayed your own values. It uncovers the layers of fear that have guided your choices. But it also awakens something ancient inside you, the warrior who remembers that life is not about comfort, but about meaning, about service, about awakening. when you accept that you will die and that the date is not yours to know, you begin to walk differently, you speak more carefully, you listen more deeply, you take your relationships more seriously, you stop taking your breath for granted. A human life is like a candle in the wind. It can burn brightly, but it can also flicker out at any moment. And yet, in that fragile flame is the power to warm others, to light up darkness, to become a beacon. But that power is only realized when one is fully awake to the reality that this flame is temporary. To live with this awareness is not to be sad. It is to be urgent in the right way. There are two kinds of urgency in life. One is the urgency of fear, rushing, scrambling, trying to do everything at once before it's too late. That is not what we seek. The other is the urgency of purpose. It is quiet, it is calm, it is steady, but it is relentless. It says, I will not waste this day. I will not betray my spirit. I will live so fully that when the final breath comes, I will have no regrets. When you look at your palm and see the death line, do not ask, how long do I have? Ask instead, what am I doing with what I already have? This question brings your attention to this breath, this choice, this conversation. The truth is, the line in your palm is just a symbol. You are not meant to predict your end. You are meant to deepen your beginning. Every morning you wake up is not a repetition. It is a rebirth, a fresh opportunity to start again. Not to chase the life others want you to live, but to walk your path with clarity and courage. Every day you are alive, death walks beside you. Not as an enemy, but as a reminder. You are not here forever, so do not act as if you are. In the Shaolin Temple, training begins and ends with stillness. Not because movement is unimportant, but because stillness is where clarity is found. In stillness, you feel the weight of time. In stillness, you hear the voice within you, the one that is tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of surviving. That voice longs to live authentically, to live meaningfully. And that kind of life is only possible when you live with awareness. Death is the greatest teacher because it cuts through all illusion. It shows you what matters. It humbles your ego. It silences your noise. It opens your heart. If you had only 1 year left, would you spend it chasing approval? Would you spend it accumulating things you cannot take with you? Would you hold grudges? Would you hide your truth? Probably not. You would forgive, you would create, you would express, you would connect, you would focus, you would live. So why wait? The death line in your palm is not your master. It is your motivator. Use it not to fear the end, but to empower your now. Every second you hesitate, every dream you postpone, every truth you silence, that is a kind of dying. But every step you take in alignment, every act of courage, every moment of real presence, that is a kind of living that not even death can erase. We fear death when we live unconsciously, but when we live with clarity, death becomes just another part of the rhythm of nature. Flowers bloom and flowers fall, stars burn and stars fade, trees grow and trees return to the soil. So too does the human body return to the earth. But what remains? Not the line in your palm. What remains is the energy you gave, the love you shared, the purpose you embodied. That energy lives on in memories, in art, in others' hearts, in the legacy of how you lived your moments. Do not seek to extend your life by fearfully clinging to it. Seek instead to expand your life by fully entering it. The time you have is not the problem. The way you use your time, that is what matters. You may live 30 years or 90, but the person who lives with awareness, even for a single year, experiences more depth than the one who sleepwalks through decades. Awareness brings depth. An awareness of death brings the sharpest awareness of all. The moment you remember that this could be your last conversation with someone, you will speak with more care, The moment you remember that this could be your final sunrise, you will look up instead of down. The moment you accept that your body will not last forever, you will stop abusing it and start honoring it. The line in your palm is not fixed. It changes. Like all things, it responds to the flow of life. It reflects your energy, your intention, your discipline. The ancients understood that destiny is not imposed, it is cultivated. Your awareness creates your path. And when your awareness includes death, not as a curse, but as a companion, then your path becomes focused. You do not waste time arguing about who is right. You do not waste energy comparing yourself to others. You stop distracting yourself with entertainment and start nourishing yourself with truth. You stop living at the surface and start going to the root. That is what awareness of death gives you. Not fear, not paralysis, but razor-sharp clarity. It says, this is the moment. This is the opportunity. This is your life. There is a story told in ancient temples, one that has no beginning and no end, because it is not just a story, but a cycle of realization. A young disciple once approached the master with great urgency, his eyes wide and full of tension. He held out his hand, palm open, and said, "Master, I have read that this line here is my lifeline, and this one, they say, is the death line, and they are short. Does this mean I will die soon? Should I prepare myself for an early death?" The master looked at the disciple's hand, then looked into his eyes and said nothing. The silence was not empty, it was deep, like still water. Then finally he spoke. "Before you look into the palm," he said, "you must first look into the mind. For the palm does not shape your life, the mind does." These words are not metaphor, they are instruction. The ancient practice of reading palms or observing the patterns of the body was never meant to trap people into fixed beliefs about their destiny. It was meant to invite introspection, to reflect how inner choices manifest in outer reality. The palm is not the source of your fate. It is the canvas that recalls the energy you cultivate. To confuse the record with the author is the first error. The palm shows a snapshot. It is not the master, and it never was. Too often we surrender our power to symbols. We see a mark on the hand and believe it defines us. We hear a prediction and allow it to limit us. We read a diagnosis and collapse into despair. But what is the thread through all of these reactions? It is belief. The beliefs we hold become the lens through which we interpret everything. And those interpretations, those meanings we assign, create our actions. Actions become habits. Habits become character, and character over time carves a path through the world. If you believe the line in your hand limits you, it will. Not because the line has power, but because you gave it your power. There is a simple truth we often forget. The body reflects the mind, and the mind reflects the spirit. Everything in the body, from posture to breath to facial expression, mirrors what is happening within. The hand, too, is part of that expression. If you are chronically fearful, it may show in the tightness of your grip. If you are constantly reactive, it may appear in the sharpness of your gestures. And if you live in purpose, in alignment, in integrity, it will radiate even through the stillness of your hands. The palm is not fixed like stone. It is alive like water. It shifts subtly with the current of your life. Many people fear this idea because they want certainty. They want something to tell them you will be safe, or you will succeed, or you will live long. And so they look to signs, to patterns, to lines. But this desire for external confirmation is a misunderstanding of the path. In the Shaolin tradition, the path is not paved by guarantees. It is carved by discipline, by clarity, by action. You are not here to be told your fate. You are here to forge it. This is not a call for arrogance. It is a call for responsibility, to accept that your life is shaped not by what is written in the palm, but by what is written in your intention. Ask yourself this: how often do you act based on inner wisdom, and how often do you react based on outer noise? The more you react, the more you surrender authorship of your life. The more you act, deliberately, with awareness, the more your life becomes your own. You see, destiny is not a distant island waiting to be discovered. It is a mountain built by your own steps. And the palm, if anything, is the map of where your footsteps have already fallen. If the lines are deep in one direction, it is because you have walked that way many times. If they are shallow in another, it may be a path yet unexplored. But a map does not tell you where you must go. It tells you where you have been. You decide what path to walk now. That decision does not come from superstition. It comes from alignment. Alignment means your thoughts, your words, and your actions are walking in the same direction. When they are not aligned, you feel inner conflict. You say one thing but do another. You think one way but behave in the opposite way. That conflict weakens your energy, and a weakened energy cannot shape new lines in the palm of your life. But when your inner world and outer behavior are united, you generate power, not noise. Power, silent, steady power that transforms not just your body, but the very way your life unfolds. So the question is not, what do the lines in my palm say? The question is, what is my energy creating moment by moment? There are people with strong palms, long lines, well-defined features, but they are spiritually empty. They may live long, but not deeply. There are others whose palms are marked with hardship, but their eyes shine with awareness. Their journey may be short, but it is full. Do not confuse quantity with quality. A long life without purpose is still a wasted one, but a focused, intentional life, no matter how brief, leave a mark that no palm line can erase. In the Shaolin teachings, we are reminded again and again, the body is a tool, the mind is a bridge, the spirit is the source, and mastery means learning how to align all three. So when you look at your palm, see it for what it is. A reflection, nothing more. Not a prison, not a prophecy, a reflection. What is it reflecting? It is showing the echoes of your past decisions. It is a feedback mechanism. If you don't like what you see, don't curse the mirror, change the pattern. And this is where the true practice begins. Not in changing your fate overnight, but in changing your direction, one step at a time. Every conscious breath you take reshapes your nervous system. Every act of presence rewires your perception. Every choice made from awareness instead of reaction alters your internal signature. You are not who you were last year. You are not even who you were yesterday. You are a river, always flowing. And the river does not ask permission from the rocks, it moves. It simply moves, steadily, persistently, and with purpose. Sometimes we are told by others, friends, parents, society, that we are limited, that we are only capable of so much, that we must accept our lot. And sometimes this idea settles into our bones. We internalize the ceiling others place above us. We look at our palms and imagine them as chains. But these are not chains unless we grip them tightly. Release the grip and you will see the palm is a symbol, not a sentence. The past is a teacher, not a jailer. And you are not the product of your lines, you are the author of your lineage. The great irony is this. Many people believe they are victims of fate because they have forgotten how powerful their choices are. Not the big dramatic choices, but the small, invisible ones. The choice to meditate instead of escape. The choice to speak true instead of silence. The choice to forgive instead of resent. These choices are seeds. You may not see the results today, but the hand you raise in discipline will write a different future than the hand you raise in fear. There is no mastery without responsibility. There is no liberation without awareness, and there is no transformation without patience. You must become willing to observe your inner world without judgment and then act in harmony with that observation. This is the path. This is what it means to become the master of your palm. Not by changing the lines through force, but by shifting the current of your life so that the lines change themselves. If you look at the hands of a monk who has spent decades in practice, you may see lines that seem unusual, curved, blended, deep. This is not magic. This is the physical echo of thousands of hours of stillness, movement, intention, and repetition. The body records everything. It is the storage device of the spirit, but the recording is not final. You are always writing, always rewriting. The pen is in your hand. The ink is your attention. Where you place your focus, your energy follows. Where your energy flows, your form follows. And where your form flows, your future is shaped. So when you next look at your palm, ask not what it says about your future. Ask what it reveals about your patterns. Then decide. Do these patterns serve the life you want to live? If not, change them. Not tomorrow. Not when you have more time, not when the stars align, but now. The stars are not your guide, the line is not your map, the decision is your compass. Your life is not written in the palm, it is written in the present. There is a teaching that passes quietly between generations, whispered by monks in mountain temples and carried by sages who walk unnoticed through busy city streets. It is not the kind of teaching you will find in books, nor will it be announced by loud voices or proclaimed on signs. It is a truth that must be discovered slowly, like the path that reveals itself only after many footsteps. The teaching is this, that your end is sacred, not because it is final, but because it completes the circle. In many cultures, people seek to know when they will die. They ask the stars, the cards, the oracles, the palms. They look at the death line and try to guess the year, the season, the moment, as if knowing it would somehow prepare them, as if by predicting the end they could finally begin to live. But the wise do not seek to predict the end. The wise prepare to meet it with reverence. They do not see death as an appointment on a calendar. They see it as the final bow after a performance. The silence after the last note, the breath after the story has been told. They do not ask, when will it come? They ask, how will I meet it when it does? The problem with trying to predict death is that it turns life into a countdown. When you live by a countdown, you live in fear. Every day becomes a subtraction. Every moment becomes a shadow. You are not truly present because part of you is always calculating, measuring, bracing. You walk through life like someone holding fragile glass, afraid to drop it, afraid to make a sound. But life is not meant to be tiptoed through. Life is meant to be embraced. And to embrace life, you must accept death, not as a threat, but as a companion walking beside you, reminding you of what is precious. There is a deep wisdom in accepting the impermanence of all things. Flowers bloom and then they wither. The moon waxes, then wanes. The tide rises, then retreats. And so it is with every form in nature. But impermanence does not make these things less beautiful. It is the very reason they are beautiful. Would you stare at a mountain sunset with the same awe if you knew it would last forever? Would you listen to the laughter of a child with the same wonder if you thought that sound would never fade? It is because we know these things are temporary that we treasure them. And so it must be with our lives. Our end is not a flaw in the design, it is the final stroke that completes the painting. When you understand this, you no longer seek to run from the end. You begin to walk toward it, not with haste, but with grace. You begin to ask different questions. Not how can I avoid death, but what can I give before I go? Not how can I make life longer, but how can I make it deeper? You stop obsessing over how the lines in your palm will unfold, and you start cultivating the kind of life that no line can contain. You realize that the worth of a life is not measured by the number of days, but by the depth of presence, the sincerity of actions, and the courage to live in alignment. To honor your end is not to glorify death. It is to live in a way that when death arrives, you are not afraid to meet its gaze. When you honor something, you give it your full attention, you treat it with care, you see it as sacred. So to honor your end means to shape your life as though it matters. It means to make decisions not from fear, but from truth. It means to speak words that carry weight, to take actions that build peace, to love without holding back. And it means to resolve your life as you go. Not waiting for the final hour to find forgiveness, to offer gratitude, to express your heart. Many people carry unfinished conversations, unreleased emotions, and unspoken truths for years, thinking they will get around to them eventually, but death is not concerned with our schedules. It comes when it comes. And so the practice of honoring your end begins now. It begins with the discipline of daily integrity, of making peace with yourself at the end of each day, so that no moment is left holding regret. It is not about being perfect, it is about being honest. It is about being awake enough to know when you have strayed and humble enough to return. In the temples, monks sweep the ground every morning, not because it is dirty, but to practice care, to show reverence, to remind themselves that every step is part of the path. And every act can be sacred if done with presence. You do not wait for the last day to live honorably. You live honorably so that when the last day comes, it finds you already prepared. That preparation is not built in one act. It is built in small choices, repeated until they become your way. Imagine that death stands behind you, not as a shadow, but as a teacher. Not whispering, "You will end," but asking, "How are you living? What would you do differently if you knew this? Would you rush? No. You would likely slow down. You would notice more. You would hold people a little longer. You would listen without needing to speak. You would create without needing applause. You would speak your truth without delay." This is what it means to honor your end, to live as if your life is already sacred, because it is. The line in your palm may suggest an ending, but the energy in your actions defines your legacy. A life well lived does not fear the end. It welcomes it as a doorway, not a wall. There are people who have touched hundreds of lives in a single decade, and there are others who have drifted for a lifetime, touching nothing. Which life do you think was more complete? Completion is not about length. It is about presence, intention, and alignment. One of the most overlooked truths is this: to live with awareness of death is to be more fully alive. When you forget death, you postpone your life. You say, "I'll start the book tomorrow. I'll heal the relationship later. I'll take care of my health next month." But when you remember death, you start now. You understand that time is not promised, and so you waste less of it. You understand that people are not guaranteed, and so you love them more fully. You understand that your voice may not echo forever, and so you speak with clarity and sincerity. To honor your end is not to obsess over it. It is to let it guide you into focus. It is to see that every breath is a gift and to use it well. In the Shaolin tradition, breath is sacred. It is the bridge between body and mind, between life and death. Every breath is a moment of opportunity. To breathe consciously is to live consciously. To live consciously is to die without regrets. It is said that a master dies in the same way he lives, with awareness, with simplicity, and with peace. This is not something that happens automatically. It is the result of a lifetime of practice, of facing fear, of observing the mind, of training the body, of disciplining the thoughts, of purifying the intentions. To die with peace, you must live with peace. To meet death with presence, you must cultivate presence every day. Not just when it is convenient, not just when you are comfortable, but especially when life becomes challenging. Challenge is not the enemy of peace, it is the forge in which peace is strengthened. When you face hardship and still choose awareness, still choose discipline, you are training for the moment when everything ends, and if you have trained well, you will not be surprised when the final breath comes. You will not cling, you will not plead, you will simply breathe out. just as you have breathed every other day, and release. But you do not wait for that final breath to live fully. You use every breath until then to shape your world. That is what it means to honor the end. Not to wait for it, but to live so intentionally that when it comes, it meets no resistance. It finds you empty of regret, full of presence, and at peace with the journey you have walked. When people fear death, it is often because they fear they have not lived. They fear the things left unsaid, the chances not taken, the years spent in distraction. But it is never too late to return. Even in this moment, you can shift. You can begin to live in a way that honors your end by honoring your now. You can turn away from noise and toward stillness, away from illusion and toward truth, away from hesitation and toward action. You can become the kind of person who is not defined by how long they live, but by how deeply they live. This is not a romantic idea. It is a path of discipline, of sacrifice, of choosing what is meaningful over what is easy. It is the decision to walk through life as a student, not just of books, but of silence, of failure, of impermanence. To understand that life is a mystery not meant to be solved, but lived. That death is not an interruption, but a return. So when you look at your hand and see the line they call death, let it be a mirror, not of fear, but of clarity, not of limitation, but of invitation. Let it remind you not to count your days, but to make your days count. Let it call you not to predict your end, but to honor it through the way you rise each morning, through the way you treat the people you love, through the way you walk your path, not with arrogance, but with humility. So now you have looked at your palm. You have stared at the lines with curiosity, perhaps with fear, perhaps with a silent hope that they might reveal something to you, something about how long you will live, whether your dreams will be fulfilled, whether your journey will be smooth or difficult. You have asked the question, so many ask, is my fate already written here? And now you have received the answer. The line in your palm does not hold the key, you do. All that you seek, meaning, clarity, courage, peace. It does not live in the ink of a prediction or in the symbols passed down by tradition. It lives in your breath, in your actions, in your discipline, in your presence. You came searching for the death line. But what you have truly found, if you have listened with the whole of your being, is a reminder of life. Because in the end, the line in your hand is just that, a line. It cannot hold your spirit. It cannot contain your will. It cannot measure your truth. Your palm is not your prison. Your past is not your cage. You are the one who decides how you will rise, how you will move, how you will face the unknown. If there is a line worth finding, it is not in your hand. It is the invisible line you walk every day between unconsciousness and awareness, between fear and discipline, between surviving and truly living. Walk that line with your head high, your heart clear, and your step. Do not fear the end, honor it. Let it sharpen your clarity, let it make you humble, let it push you to live each day, not as if it might be your last, but as if it absolutely matters. Because it does. This body will pass, this breath will one day fade, but the energy you bring, the peace you cultivate, the truth you live, these ripple out far beyond your final moment. So when death comes, as it will for us all, let it find you ready, not because you predicted it, but because you honored it with how you lived. Bow not to fate, but to your own presence. And remember, a palm may carry the mark, but you carry the meaning. Return to your path, walk it fully, not someday, now.